Ethan stands on a familiar street, listening to an old man scream for him to stop. He ignores the warning and opens a small wooden box. A brilliant blue light erupts into the air, and the world immediately halts. Cars stop in their tracks. Birds freeze midair. Total silence takes over. Inside the box sits a single golden key, emitting a soft, pulsing glow. Engraved directly into the metal is a specific protocol: do not use. Baton bell rings and the world resumes, but the atmosphere has shifted. Music from nearby cafes cuts out. The laughing children go silent. A fruit seller freezes. A man drops his newspaper. Every person on the street stops to stare directly at Ethan. They simply watch him in absolute silence. The metal in his pocket becomes almost too hot to touch. On the cobblestones, a ribbon of light appears, tracing a path through the town. Above the glowing road, a single command forms in the air: run. Ethan sprints through the streets, guided by the golden line. Behind him, the crowd breaks their silence, shouting and giving chase. He weaves over flower-covered bridges and past glowing lanterns, following the only exit the key provides. The path leads him to a massive blue door hidden between two buildings, a door Ethan has never seen in his entire life. The key flies from his pocket, enters the lock, and the door swings open. With the mob closing in, Ethan steps through and the door slams shut. The heavy click of the lock signals a physical break from his reality. He is no longer in the town he grew up in. He is standing in an impossible space, separated from his world by a door that has effectively vanished from the street he left behind. He steps into a garden where the trees are made of silver and the rivers flow like liquid diamonds. Above him, the sky is split in two, a purple sunset on one side and a bright blue sunrise on the other. A woman named Luna approaches him, confirming that he has entered the hidden kingdom. She looks at the key in his hand, validating that the magic he's seeing is real and that it carries a specific weight. A violent tremor rips through the garden, cutting their conversation short. Huge flocks of golden birds explode into the sky as the ground beneath them begins to buckle and shake. Luna identifies the threat as the Shadow Hunters. These are armored soldiers with red eyes, an invading force that specifically targets the person carrying the artifact. As the hunters approach, the kingdom physically loses its vibrancy. The glowing pink flowers and silver leaves wither instantly, turning into gray ash as the colors are literally drained from the landscape. Luna and Ethan sprint across the dying terrain. They head toward a massive crystal castle, seeking shelter inside the only structure that hasn't yet turned to ash. The artifact serves as an active beacon for the invaders. By opening that box, Ethan brought a world-ending force directly into this previously untouched sanctuary. Inside, the castle is filled with hundreds of floating crystals, each glowing with its own color. At the center of the hall, an old woman wearing a crown of silver leaves waits. The queen recognizes the item Ethan is holding. To explain why his arrival has triggered an invasion, she initiates a holographic projection that reveals the history of the realm. This projection shows Morak, a figure who once served as the kingdom's greatest protector, represented by these protective shields. Over time, his purpose shifted. He transformed into a warlord. The shadows are his army, expanding across the kingdom. The history lesson is cut short as the castle wall shatters. Thousands of glass shards fly into the room as shadow soldiers flood the sanctuary. Luna pulls Ethan away as the soldiers charge. They scramble up crystal stairs and across bridges that are beginning to crack, eventually ducking into a small, hidden chamber. The door seals, and the noise of the battle vanishes. In the sudden, heavy silence, Ethan leans against the stone wall and demands to know the truth about why he is here. Luna looks at the artifact and finally admits the mistake. The key was never meant to choose Ethan. It was supposed to find someone else entirely. The key begins to glow with an uncontrollable intensity. It projects a complex, ancient symbol onto the dark stone wall, a physical confirmation of the error. The queen sees the blinding light and immediately realizes the gravity of the situation. Ethan is an anomaly trapped inside a cosmic malfunction. He is an intruder in a deadly war meant for a different person, left to navigate a world that never intended for him to arrive.
You're doing amazing! Let's start part 2.
The environment is failing. Across the realm, the forests are losing their saturation, leaving behind brittle, ash-gray branches. The rivers have stopped flowing, and the once bright sky is settling into a permanent twilight. This decay stems from a single source. At the center of the kingdom, the heart crystal is splitting apart. As the cracks spread across its surface, the energy that sustains the land leaks into the atmosphere and vanishes. The citizens believe this is a war. They have been taught that a monster named Morak is draining the world's life, and that a hero named Ethan will use the golden key to strike him down and restore the balance. Every plan the kingdom makes, from its military defenses to its prayers, is based on this specific story. They are waiting for a battle that will save their world, assuming the hero and the villain are exactly who the legends say they are. But inside a forgotten chamber of the castle, ancient projectors reveal a different set of events. These floating images show a history that the current leaders have worked for decades to erase. In these images, Morak isn't a monster. He is a protector. He is shown leading the kingdom's defenses and working alongside the very people who now call him a villain. The timeline is clear. When an incurable sickness struck the kingdom 20 years ago, the leadership couldn't find a cure. To prevent a revolt, they arrested their most prominent protector and told the public he was the one who caused the plague. Morak himself enters the room, followed by his shadow soldiers. He doesn't move to attack. He stands in the doorway with the heavy, slumped shoulders of someone who has spent 20 years carrying the weight of a kingdom's lies. The villain they feared is a man the kingdom betrayed to cover its own failures. Their entire understanding of the world's decline is built on a foundation of manufactured guilt. Morak explains the physical reality of the crisis. He isn't the one breaking the heart crystal. The crystal is failing because it is fueled by the kingdom's collective integrity, and the weight of the lie has finally become too heavy for the world to support. The golden key reacts, glowing with a heat that forces Ethan to drop it. As it floats, it projects ancient runes onto the stone walls, instructions that have never appeared in any of the kingdom's holy books. The old woman reads the text, her voice shaking. She realizes that the prophecy everyone memorized was a sanitized version, rewritten to hide the artifact's actual purpose. The original text doesn't mention a warrior or a victory. It says the key-bearer's role isn't to protect the crystal from an enemy, or to lead an army into battle. The runes describe a judge. The key's presence means the kingdom has reached a point where its future is no longer guaranteed. Ethan is there to look at the truth of their history and decide if the world is worth continuing. Outside, the ground trembles as the heart crystal suffers a massive structural failure. A pillar of white light shoots from the center of the crystal toward the clouds, signaling that the end is minutes away. The final colors leak out of the fissures. The deep blues of the rivers and the greens of the valley floor turn to a flat, dead gray. If the crystal shatters completely, there will be nothing left to hold the landscape together. Morak warns them that this isn't a war they can win with soldiers. If the heart of the world breaks, every person in the kingdom, guilty or innocent, will vanish along with it. Luna looks at Ethan. She isn't asking him to fight Morak anymore. She sees the key glowing in front of him and realizes that the survival of everyone she knows now depends on a moral choice he has to make. Ethan steps toward the exit. He isn't a soldier following a script anymore. He has to carry the internal burden of the kingdom's history and decide if their potential for change outweighs the damage they've done. Ethan arrives at the base of the heart crystal. Thousands of people have gathered there, standing in the gray dust of their dying world. They aren't cheering for a hero. They are waiting in a desperate, heavy silence. The golden key floats toward the center of the crystal. A deep, resonant hum vibrates heavily through the air, and the crystal itself speaks, demanding that the bearer state his final judgment. Ethan weighs the kingdom's beauty against its dark betrayal. He speaks the truth of the lie, the panic, and the scapegoating of Morak. The scales tip toward destruction. But as the crowd lowers their heads, stopping their excuses, the scales reach balance. The decision is made. The demand for perfection is set aside in favor of the difficult, honest work of making amends. The kingdom is given a chance, not because it is innocent, but because it is finally being honest. The crystal erupts in a wave of light. The gray desaturation vanishes as vivid magentas return to the flora and mountain rivers turn deep blue. The fractures on the heart crystal seal themselves, leaving the surface smooth and glowing. The old woman approaches Morak. She doesn't offer a grand speech, just a quiet acknowledgement of the wrong done to him. Morak accepts the apology, and his shadow soldiers dissolve into harmless particles of light. As night falls, the kingdom begins to rebuild. Floating lanterns rise over the crystal bridges, and for the first time in 20 years, the celebration isn't based on the myth of a victory, but on the reality of the truth. The golden key falls to the ground. Its light has faded, and it feels like an ordinary piece of metal. Its function as a trigger for this confrontation is over. Ethan watches the families reuniting in the valley. He sees Morak standing among the people he once protected. He looks toward the stars, knowing the key provided no miracle, only the clarity needed to choose a different path. The heart crystal remains stable. The kingdom has its color back. This outcome was reached because a society stopped attacking a perceived enemy and instead chose to address the internal decay that was actually destroying them.
You can download the illustrated storybook using the link below. Keep practicing English every day. See you in the next lesson.